Cheryl go?
It's 1 o'clock and Cheryl's on a break. Are you so caught up with work that you've set aside any thoughts of upskilling or reskilling? Well, a career expert explains how loud learning could get you back on track. And National Day is fast approaching. If you're in the mood for a Mexican-style fiesta with fantastic music during the upcoming long weekend, stay tuned for details on the perfect spot to party in just a moment. First, here's the news. We begin with news out of Bangladesh. A day after the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's ouster, the formation of an interim government is gathering pace. Reports say student protesters want Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus to be the chief advisor to the caretaker government. The country's army chief, who has taken temporary control, is set to meet protest leaders today. Let's hear from one of the students celebrating the ouster.
This is not just the end of the tyrant Sheikh Hasina. With this, we put an end to the mafia state that she has created. We put an end to the corporate kleptocracy that she has started. We don't want a military government. What we need is a civilians charter. We need a civilians government, and we're going to ensure it.
Nusrat Chowdhury is Associate Professor of Anthropology and Sociology at Amherst College. She says Ms. Hasina's resignation does not come as a complete surprise.
Given the kind of excessive violence that has gripped Bangladesh in the past 2 weeks or so, and the way in which the government seemed really out of touch with what the protesters were wanting, it was obvious to those of us who study and observe Bangladesh, and many of us who live there, that things could not have gone back to the way they were, the status quo. But at the same time, I think many of us were surprised at the haste in which the events have unfolded. The tipping point has been, I think, the violence. And it's not just a tipping point. I mean, the political scientist Ali Riaz has called the quota movement as a spark. It's a spark that started the fire. But there has been a kind of long history, a kind of cumulative effect of grievances and resentment that kind of came out through this protest, which the New York Times just described, as starting as a simple bread and butter issue, which became an oppositional movement, given the way in which the demands of the students and then the ordinary citizens who joined them were dismissed, to a certain extent criminalized by the regime, and the way the protesters were slandered. So I think after the excessive violence and the kind of loss that ordinary...
To set up your device using a screen reader, turn on narrator by pressing Windows and Control and Enter. For more accessibility features, press Windows and U, or select the accessibility icon in the bottom corner.
Minister Keir Starmer has vowed swift criminal sanctions for violent protesters as he sought to quell days of anti-immigration rioting. He has convened an emergency meeting with ministers and police chiefs, announcing a new standing army of specialist police officers to get a grip on the protests. The Prime Minister has blamed misinformation for the riots.
Whatever the apparent motivation, this is not protest. It is pure violence, and we will not tolerate attacks on mosques or our Muslim communities. So the full force of the law will be visited on all those who are identified as having taken part in these activities.
Riots erupted across towns and cities last week after 3 girls were killed in a knife attack in northwest England. They took to the streets after false rumors quickly spread online that the suspect was a Muslim and an asylum seeker. Now that led to attacks on immigrants. The unrest has sparked fear among the community. Alexander Hilton is a political analyst with Skystamper. He has more on the disinformation that played a significant part in the unrest.
So Britain doesn't have the kind of anti-disinformation laws or even anti-public protest laws that Singapore has, or the restrictions. And Britain's really kind of reveled in its free speech culture for hundreds of years. So if you look at this rioting, we're talking about a lot of rioters. They're not really connected, they're not really organized. But if this extends for any period of time, you're then looking at communities that feel threatened organising themselves. And then that escalates the situation. You end up with rival gangs and things getting even more violent. So the government really does have to deal with this very quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if, despite really having a value of free speech in the UK, Britain looking very, very seriously at whether there needs to be some emergency legislation perhaps passed, preventing disinformation and potentially holding the likes of Twitter, Facebook and Telegram accountable for the harms done.
The United Nations says it has fired 9 staff members from its Agency for Palestinian Refugees, also known as UNRWA. That's after an internal probe found they may have been involved in the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. The UN did not elaborate on their role in the assault. Its internal watchdog has been investigating UNRWA since Israel accused 12 staff of taking part in the attacks that triggered the Gaza war. 7 more cases were brought to the UN's attention later. Top donor nations suspended their funding for UNRWA following the allegations. This caused a cash crunch of about $450 million US. Since then, all donor countries except the US have resumed funding. The US is continuing its policy of strengthening alliances in the Indo-Pacific. Its foreign and defense ministers are meeting their Australian counterparts as part of their annual ministerial dialogue. Rani Samtani reports.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin are co-hosting Australia's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defense Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Penny Wong. Mr. Blinken has said that both countries are engaged in an important alliance. This includes resource exploration, development of supply chains for critical materials, as well as fighting state information manipulation.
This is basically a partnership to work together even more effectively on combating misinformation and disinformation. We know that around the world, we're in an environment in which disinformation is unfortunately a tool of choice for countries that are adversarial relationships with both of our countries.
Defense Secretary Austin also held bilateral talks with Mr. Marles. Washington had agreed to help Canberra produce guided multiple launch rocket systems by 2025 at the last Austin meeting. This cooperation comes amid the backdrop of China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region.
And reports say U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has narrowed down the list of her potential running mates to 2 candidates, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. She's also officially secured the Democratic presidential nomination after the Democratic National Committee completed a virtual roll call. The Democratic National Convention will be held in about 2 weeks in Chicago. John Ogenbo is Associate Professor of Political Science at Virginia Commonwealth University. He explains why the VP pick is so important.
Picking a vice presidential candidate for many presidential candidates in the United States is designed to send a message to particular voters. So in this case, Vice President Harris, to whom does she want to send a message? Does she want to send a message to moderate voters, and thus might go with Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro? Or does she send a message to progressive voters within the Democratic Party caucus and pick Minnesota Governor Walz? So I think that is the big question for the Harris campaign. What set or subset of voters does she want to send a message to in the selection of the vice presidential candidate?
A heat wave in China continues to bake the eastern parts of the country, with temperatures as high as 43.9 degrees Celsius, scorching places including Shanghai, Anhui, and Xinjiang. Forecasters expect the extreme heat to linger in coastal cities for up to 10 more days. People have been keeping cool by staying indoors and turning on the air conditioner. However, that has led to electricity usage going up, threatening a supply crunch. Weather officials say the record heat has been made worse by high continental temperatures due to global warming. That's even as the La Nina weather phenomenon brings cooler than average sea surface temperatures. Headlines anytime on CNA 938 and CNA.Asia. Several vehicle breakdowns to tell you about. The first is on the KJE towards the PIE before the PIE Changi exit. Elsewhere, there's a stalled vehicle on the SLE towards the CTE before Lentor Avenue exit. Another vehicle has broken down. This one's on the PIE towards Tuas after the BKE. And on the CTE towards the AYE, there's a stalled vehicle after the PIE Changi exit. Weather-wise, you can expect showers mainly over the northern and western parts of Singapore this afternoon and a top temperature of 34 degrees Celsius.
Always take the weather with you. Mitsubishi Electric StarMax Aircon saves you energy and money. It's easy to clean and is one of the finest.
Prime Minister Lawrence Wong's National Day message will be broadcast on Thursday, the 8th of August at 6:45 p.m. on CNA and CNA 938. The message will be available on cna.asia/NDP 2024 and mewatch.sg/NDP 2024 after the broadcast.
Here's what you need: a wrap-up of the day's biggest news and the stories that matter.
The way we work will change. However, will it be completely replaced?
If you're a good student, you went to junior college. If you couldn't make it to junior college, you went to poly. That was an unfortunate stigma that did exist, yes.
In those days, right, it's notoriously difficult to make any changes in the black market supply. Where there's money, there's going to be supply.
Always.
How many of us have seen anyone being caught vaping? So I think it will be anti-trend if we don't really enforce this.
I think the risk is that students will be tempted to just let the AI do all the work.
Complete your day with us.
Weekdays 5 to 8 p.m. on
Singapore Today with Lance Alexander and Daniel Martin.
This is Work It on CNA 938. I'm Julie Lin. Are you eager to learn new skills but finding it hard to do so because of work commitments or other reasons? Well, you're not alone. New consumer research from LinkedIn has shown that 95% of professionals in Singapore are finding it hard to prioritize learning. But it adds that loud learning could be the solution. Well, what exactly is loud learning? Here to explain is LinkedIn career expert Pooja Chabria. Pooja, thanks very much for joining me on Work It today. Before we get into loud learning, first help us understand why so many workers are struggling to prioritize learning.
Yeah, definitely. So what we've seen from our research and as we talk to members is most professionals today understand that learning is crucial for their career growth, that they need to upskill. But the challenges that they face are pretty much similar to what you were saying in your introduction, right? So they have busy schedules, they have work and family commitments, and also there's a bit of lack of motivation to learn. I think these are some of the top problems that professionals are facing, but professionals do realize that it is so crucial for their career growth.
Okay, so how is loud learning expected to help solve the problem?
Yeah, so loud learning is this act of being vocal and intentional about your learning ambitions in the workplace. So for example, how it would manifest is you share with your teams, you share with your managers what your learning objectives are. So what I typically do is when I build my quarterly OKRs, the objectives key results for my quarter, I also add one objective around learning, so that it makes it more intentional that I also need to focus on that. And also other factors like learning in a community-based format, whether it is with your peers, with your colleagues, or also on LinkedIn, right? Today, professionals can follow some of the best experts on the platform, top voices across multiple functions and industries, and they can also have a conversation with them. So I think learning through community and conversation is loud learning, and it can really help professionals who are struggling to find that time.
Okay, so essentially you're just telling everyone that you intend to learn X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because I think what happens is it drives that accountability and it drives the community. So the same research, we found that 60% of professionals in Singapore say that when they see their peers adopting loud learning, it inspires them also, it motivates them also. So I think there's also that sort of peer influence that works. For example, right now I want to really build my skills around video production, storytelling, editing. So I've just started posting a few videos on the platform. Video is one of the fastest growing content formats on the platform today. So I've just put it as one of my OKRs. I'm just posting videos, I'm trying different things, and I also have a colleague in the Singapore office who's going through the same journey. So we exchange notes on how to edit videos better. So I think the community really helps to help you reach those learning objectives.
Right. Would you say it's most important to tell your boss that you are, taking up new skills and all that? Because I think when it comes to accountability, people may say, okay, you're learning this and that, but they don't really follow up and say, so what did you learn?
Yeah, so I would say that when you're choosing the kind of skills that you want to invest in, the kind of learning objectives that you have, I think a smart way to do it is how it helps your goal in your career and your future career aspirations, and also how it helps the company. So, for example, again coming back to my example, today video is one of the fastest growing format on the platform. For me, if I brush up my skills around video, I can also encourage our members. I can train them. It helps the business. So I would say that could be a good sweet spot when you're having that conversation with your manager. And in fact, what we're seeing is today, companies and leaders understand the value of investment in learning. They believe that it will actually drive the talent acquisition and retention. It will drive the innovation that we're looking for. We know that by 2030, skills are really going to rapidly change with the advent of AI and generative AI. So, keeping that in mind, I would say companies and leaders are very, very cognizant of the fact that they need to invest in learning for the employees.
This is Work It on CNA 938, and I'm speaking with LinkedIn career expert Pooja Chabria about the benefits of now learning. Pooja, you talked about discussing with your boss the kind of skills that one should take up. What if you are working at a company that is not willing to provide a budget to send you for training? What are your options then?
So I would say, like I said, mostly what we've seen is companies are investing in this area. But apart from that, other avenues that professionals can really leverage would be one is LinkedIn Learning. So LinkedIn has more than 20,000 courses available on the platform. People can take their pick from AI skills to soft skills to how to have difficult conversations at the workplace. So it's a very wide range of skills that are available on LinkedIn Learning. So that is one option. And of course, Singapore's Skills Future credits, right? Like that's a great opportunity that professionals here, the local workforce, should be looking to leverage. So what I would say is own your learning journey. I think you are the CEO of your career. And realizing that skills are rapidly changing, and with generative AI, now skills are going to look very different soon. So I would say that really be the CEO of your career.
Under what circumstances would you encourage people to pay for their own upskilling?
Yeah, I would say if you have the financial means, definitely. Plus, also one thing to keep in mind, which I mentioned earlier as well, is how do you smartly choose those skills which are going to help you currently in your job and also future proof your career. So I think if you keep these two things in mind, then why not? If people have the financial means, yes, please go ahead. But also coming back to the kind of resources that are available on LinkedIn itself. So we have top voices sharing knowledge, their expertise on multiple topics around marketing trends, digital businesses, startups. Just in the morning, I saw this video on LinkedIn where a product manager from Uber was talking about how they scaled their driver acquisition strategy when they were building the business from a few drivers to really scaled it to like thousands and tens and thousands of drivers. So I being, working for a consumer tech platform, I learned a lot from that. And what I could potentially do is I can also leave a comment on the video, I can ask more questions to that expert and then have that bi-directional conversation of learning. So those are some of the ways where you really don't have to spend money, but you can be continuously learning. And apart from that, what we're also seeing is today companies and leaders from companies are also breaking news on LinkedIn. So if companies are having an M&A or if they have hired a new CEO, new CMO, or they're venturing new markets or launching a new product, they are sharing it on LinkedIn, and breaking that news on LinkedIn. So you really can be up to date on what's happening in your industry if you follow those companies and if you follow those leaders. So definitely a lot of opportunity where you really don't need to pay, and you can leverage the community from a learning perspective.
But how often do these informal learning sources lead to perhaps a pay rise?
So what I would say is, we talk about investment in stocks and real estate and bonds and equities. I would say that's important, as a professional. But also invest in yourself, invest in your career, because skills is going to drive the new economy. So skills is what will differentiate you from the others. So 77% of leaders in Singapore say that they would prioritize talent who are less experienced, but they have AI skills versus someone who's more experienced but has not kept up to date on the new skills. So really, this is going to be the way, to the point, to increase, drive that career growth, drive the promotions, and companies also realize that as they are encouraging their employees to invest in learning, the incentives around that are career growth and promotions. So definitely we need to future career opportunities for professionals.
All right, and finally, do you have any other tips and tricks to get people more motivated to learn?
Yeah, I would say something as simple as just block time in your calendar. Like I do that every Friday. Every Friday of the week, I try to keep a no meeting day. So that's the time I spend on any strategy related work. That's the time also I block time to invest in my learning. For example, in our editorial team at LinkedIn, we leverage the whole community aspect. So we had a data academy in the team, so everybody was learning from each other. We have a video academy in the team, so people really teaching each other, right? The peer learning, the community learning, and we also had a course on AI skills from LinkedIn Learning that everyone went through, and then we came together in a meeting and shared our takeaways. So I would say block that time. I think being intentional is important, and put it in your OKRs if that helps you. And definitely leverage tools like LinkedIn Learning, and definitely experts for sharing their knowledge and expertise on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and it sounds like by making it intentional and sharing it with people, from what you said, it sounds like you end up creating an environment where everyone wants to learn.
Absolutely. I think you are right. I think the peer influence definitely works, and you can also think of having a learning BFF at workplace. So it's always easier to have someone you're partnering with, even on projects, but also on your learning journey. So partner with someone. A work BFF from a learning perspective can help you.
All right, great tips there. Thanks for sharing what loud learning is and why companies should be encouraged to incorporate this into their working environment.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that was LinkedIn career expert Pooja Chabria talking about how harnessing loud learning can motivate workers to make learning a priority. This is Eat Drink Singapore on CNA 938. I'm Chew Wee Lin, and today I'm featuring a restaurant that some food reviewers have called a hidden gem. Nestled in the National Gallery, Singapore, Yen, a renowned Cantonese restaurant, is adding an exciting twist to National Day celebrations. This year, Yen is marking Singapore's birthday with a special National Day dim sum menu available for lunch till August 31st. This menu features 7 new dim sum items, each inspired by beloved Singaporean flavors. But joining me to tell me more is Linda Liu, Assistant Director of Marketing Communications of Park Hotel Group. Linda, thanks so much for joining me on Eat Drink Singapore today. For those people who are not too familiar with Yen, tell us how long Yen has been in operation.
Yen has been operating since 2015, so we are celebrating our 9th anniversary this year.
Okay, and where exactly is it in the National Gallery?
We are on level 5 of the National Gallery. So National Gallery Singapore is the home to the world's largest public display of modern Southeast Asian art. So what makes it very unique about our restaurant is that you have to enter the entrance of the gallery before you make your way to the restaurant, and you will be taking in the sights of many wonderful art pieces and installations as you go along the way. When you reach the restaurant entrance on level 5, you will find a very spacious outdoor area with very impressive installations that are updated regularly. So it gives you a very fresh and unique experience with each visit at Yen.
And what are your signature dishes?
We have a few actually. One of it is our signature crispy roast suckling pig. It is served in 3 ways. So the first way is with crispy skin, where it is meticulously prepared with the roasting techniques. So it comes with house-made crisps and a variety of condiments. So guests can wrap the skin with the garnishes. Next is the calf shoulder of the suckling pig. So for those who actually enjoy a cut of the meat, this is where you will get to taste tender and flavorful meat. And the third way in our third presentation is actually the oven baked fillet with lemongrass, where the fillet is placed on top the fresh lemongrass to allow the fragrance to infuse with the meat as it bakes. So you will enjoy fillet that is moist, tender, and bursting with flavor. Another signature dish is actually our Peking roast duck. So it is characterized by its crispy skin and the very moist meat as well. And similar to the suckling pig, it is served with crisps and as well as a selection of condiments. So I have a third signature, but this is more of my personal favorite and is an insider secret. So only those who know will know because this is not listed in our menu.
Oh wow.
It is called our wok fried prawns with pan fried chong fan in chef's special sauce. So chong fan is a steamed rice roll. What happened is that imagine a perfectly pan fried chong fan with that very charming wok hei flavor, but still maintaining the bouncy texture as you chew on it. So the chef's special sauce adds a very savory depth to it, and trust me, you want to have a spoonful of sauce to pair with every bite of the chong fan. And it is coupled with fresh prawns and served in a clay pot to maintain the temperature of the dish. So as the dish is being served to you, you can hear the sizzles of the food, so making you salivating even before you try to eat it. This dish is actually best enjoyed when it's still hot, so it's either you have to take your photos quickly, as we all know our cameras always eat first these days, or let's not take any photos and keep this secret amongst ourselves.
Well, it sounds absolutely delicious. I don't know why you would keep it a secret. Okay, well, as I mentioned at the start, Yen has a special National Day dim sum menu. Tell us what's the inspiration behind this.
Actually, this National Day dim sum menu is a long-standing tradition at Yen. It's just that every year we introduce new dishes to it while still keeping some of the favorites. At Yen Restaurant, because of our very unique location at National Gallery Singapore, we actually welcome a very diverse group of diners every day, from locals to foreign visitors. So we hope to share the vibrancy of our food culture to everyone, be it you are near or far. Having seen very local inspired cocktails, cakes and other treats, we are thinking, why not bring this innovation to our dim sum selection? So since dim sum is already a very beloved part of Singapore's culinary scene, we decided to inject some local elements and incorporate some iconic flavors that Singaporeans love, like laksa, bak kut teh, in our dim sum creation. So that's how we introduced this year's National Day dim sum menu.
All right, thanks very much for sharing all that information on Yen's National Day menu. I've been speaking to Linda Liu. She's Assistant Director of Marketing Communications at Park Hotel Group, and the restaurant Yen that we've been discussing is located at Unit 5-02 of the National Gallery Singapore at 1 St Andrews Road.
Power, greed, betrayal. Journey back 3,000 years to Central Asia, where a tragic saga unfolded in the heart of the Hunu Empire. The Mongol Khan is an epic theatrical drama that has performed to a sellout season at the London Coliseum Theatre and will be playing at Sands Theatre this October. Book your tickets now at marinabaysands.com. Sisting and Cloak, presented by Base Entertainment Asia.
Families staying strong during tough times. Family Ties with Susanam.
It's a lot more about understanding her perspective as well.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah, looking for who will understand my perspective. Through this, we actually do understand each other a lot better.
Talk to a trusted adult. And then the kids will tell me, yeah, I tell my parents, but they don't believe me.
Family Ties, Saturdays at 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. on CNA 938.
This is CNA 938. Understand Asia.
The time is 1:30. This is CNA 938. Diplomats are working hard to avert an all-out war in the Middle East, but the signs do not appear promising. Various media reports say Iran has decided to attack Israel. The US has apparently warned that a strike could be imminent within 48 hours. Iran is said to have issued an alert notifying pilots of GPS jamming in its airspace, a move similar to a warning it gave before its attack on Israel in April. The Jerusalem Post says Iran has informed the Israeli government that it intends to carry out an attack. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has ordered his air force to prepare for a possible preemptive strike. Iran says it does not want to escalate regional tensions, but it believes it must punish Israel, which it blames for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. On its part, the US is busy shoring up Israel's defenses. US Central Command Chief Michael Kurilla met Israeli officials yesterday, while additional military assets are being deployed to the region. These include the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, as well as warships and fighter jets. On the diplomatic front, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he's been engaging in intense diplomacy around the clock.
Escalation is not in anyone's interests. It will only lead to more conflict, more violence, more insecurity. It's also critical that we break this cycle by reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. That in turn will unlock possibilities for more enduring calm, not only in Gaza itself, but in other areas where the conflict could spread.
Amid the flurry of diplomatic activity, Russia's Security Council chief Sergei Shoigu has visited Tehran. Washington has downplayed the move, saying it does not expect Moscow to play a productive role in reducing regional tensions. And from Washington, CNA's Nick Harper has more on how far the US is prepared to defend its ally, Israel, while ensuring a wider war is avoided.
I think this is a case of hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. Very much a two-pronged initiative going on in Washington, D.C. at the moment. The first prong is all about de-escalation, and that comes with diplomacy. That's something we've seen during the course of the day. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he's been on phone calls with the Qatari Prime Minister, Egypt's Foreign Minister. He said earlier that he had been engaged in intense diplomacy pretty much around the clock. That diplomacy would hopefully de-escalate the situation, there wouldn't be any further attacks, and that would be the best case scenario. But at the same time, the other prong of all of this is Washington preparing for the possibility of Israel being attacked. And now, back in April, when Iran sent about 300 missiles and drones towards Israel, many of them were intercepted by the Iron Dome system that Israel has. But the US, the UK and France were also responsible for bringing down some of those missiles. And we know that the US has sent more warplanes and more fighter jets to the region, as well as ships. So there is that possibility that they are prepared to bring down any drones or missiles that are sent by Iran or as proxies. And on top of that, the US says that they are also preparing for what they say are steps to defend US forces to respond to any attack against our personnel in a manner and a place of the US's choosing. Now, earlier in the year, back in February, when 3 US service personnel were killed in Jordan by Iranian proxies, the US didn't strike any targets inside Iran, rather it chose targets in Iraq and Syria. So if there is some sort of attack, if US personnel are caught up in it, we could see the United States respond against the proxies outside of Iran and not want to take a strike on Iranian territory itself. And I think that's the distinction that the US has been keen to draw in the past and probably would do so again.
Reports say US Vice President Kamala Harris has narrowed down the list of her potential running mate to 2. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. She has officially secured the Democratic presidential nomination after the Democratic National Committee completed a virtual roll call. This was just a formality, as Ms. Harris was the only candidate who qualified after securing the backing of more than 300 delegates last week. The Democratic National Convention is set to be held in about 2 weeks in Chicago. Headlines anytime on CNA 938 and CNA.Asia. And now for Asia Business on CNA 938. Asian markets are largely bouncing back after a global market sell-off that wiped out billions of dollars. The rout was sparked by fears of a US recession. Japan's Nikkei 225 is leading the region's gains as it is up by 8% after tumbling more than 12% yesterday. Japan's Finance Minister Shunichi Suzuki says the government will continue to monitor and analyze financial market moves and work closely with the relevant authorities. South Korea's Kospi has risen by 3%, while Australia's ASX 200 is little changed as investors wait on the central bank's policy decision. Greater China markets are seeing muted